Hello, welcome to the Sunday Soul Search on a Friday. My name is Polly Harnett.
And my name is Jane Morton. And
And our
today we have the
special
lovely
guest.
Sam O'Neil, yeah!
It's like old times, Sam O'Neil, isn't it?
I know.
Like old times. So, how are you, Sam?
I'm not too bad. Coming back onto the path at last after a long time off. It's been a long time coming and everyone has been fantastically supportive coming back onto the path. It's been gradually busy. So this year looks really good.
Fabulous. And for those who don't know you, tell us a little bit about yourself, just quickly.
So I am originally with these ladies on the Sunday sofa. I am a medium, palmist, runist, and I teach as well, all of those different things. I've been on the path for about, I think it's 23 years roughly now. So extremely long time. And hopefully this year's going to be a really good year for Spirit.
It's going to be a good year for all of us, I have decided.
Okay.
So, we are going to talk today about, we'd like to have a bit of a specialist subject or a subject that we'd like to sort of talk about. And if anybody is joining us on the live, please do comment and tell us
we
if
just
this
interact
resonates
on
with
that
you.
live. I'm just going to step in on the live. For anyone that see us live last week, it went live on my page, my personal page, not my business page, which is obviously Jane Morton. For some reason, I couldn't make it public. So if anyone is seeing this live on my page, let me know. I've just tried to make it public. It's not allowing me to. So sorry if anyone's seeing it and can't actually interact. We will try and work on that. So if I keep looking away from the screen, that's me doing my techie stuff. You guys, if you want to check my personal page, see if you can do it. Maybe
I just have, and there is nothing come up.
no. So it means we are live, but we're not going to be live till we finish.
That's absolutely fine. But guys, please do interact with us, even if we have finished and it is pre-recorded that you're seeing, because we want to know about your lives. We want to know about your experiences, and we'd love to know if today's subject resonates with you in any way. So we're going to be talking today about star children, star seeds, crystal children being our main topic, perhaps. Jane, how do you feel about the crystal children? What do you know about the crystal children?
I just had this conversation. I know nothing about them. No, I'm joking. I've come across it in my healing. We've talked about indigo children, crystal children, and now, as we've just said, it's the rainbow children. I know little bits about it from doing my Rohani healing, and it comes out up and about in different things we work with. But the biggest thing I know that connects it for me is that there's a certain age group where these children are sort of clustered together, shall we say. I say a certain age group because I think the age I remember looking at was like around the 1988 sort of mark where they were becoming more noticeable.
The indigos.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I would imagine prior to the indigos, there was probably another name and another name and another name and another name. So they're not new. They're just new to the modern day world of where they're talking about and going back. For me, the link that I've always seen them with is with neurodiversity, so some kind of ADHD or some kind of autism. So normally these children that have been given these labels, or adults as they are, some of them are more probably struggling somewhere along the line with their diversity. But apart from that, no, because like we've just said, you've just corrected me, they were indigos in the 80s, they are rainbows in the 2020s. And when did they become crystal children?
It was the knees to early 2000s.
So yeah, but then pretty much then every decade has got a name for these special children that grow into adults.
Generational children have.
Yeah, so
certain
when
names.
they grow into adults, are they still indigos? Because they were
I
born.
imagine so.
I mean, if you do your homework and read into it, basically, like you said, there's clusters. There's these clusters of beings, let's say, that are supposedly star seeds. However, in our way of thinking, we are all star seeds, aren't we? But there is going to be some children. I mean, obviously, the indigos are going to be adults now, without a doubt. But we all started from somewhere. I mean, I'm not particularly religious, and I do believe that there's a big bang, but then I do believe, obviously, of a spiritual, the divine spirit and the source, and we all come from that source at the end of the day, don't we? If you believed in God, we're all God's children, not just Jesus, because we're all born into the light. Obviously, the life and everything around us shapes us to who we are. Our parents have an influence, schools have an influence, etc., etc. But so, I mean, yeah, so you've got the generation of the indigos, and then you have, let's say the indigos then have children. Not all, they don't have to come from indigos. And then you have the crystal children. They've all got similar traits, very similar traits. And then we are going into the rainbows. The rainbows are the third wave. Now, with some people have heard of rainbow babies being a baby that has come from like a miscarriage or stillbirth, that sort of thing, even terminations. And then they have been born, their soul is reborn into another child or another body. But yeah, I mean, there's quite a lot of interesting things.
I mean, it is said that with every generation that these children in particular are more gifted with every generation that comes on.
More gifted spiritually.
Yes. Yeah. Like
Yeah.
high
Well, not
intuition.
necessarily. I do think, despite their maybe some of their struggles, they are also quite intelligent in different ways in a certain area. So, I mean, who says certain people are can't even get my word out now. That are
Neurodiverse.
neurodiverse, because who's to say we're all not neurodiverse and some of us don't show it? I always find it quite a strange subject, because we could all be showing traits of something, but some people are labelled where others are not. But you do find they've normally got some kind of strong strength in academic, or whether it be like art or something like that. They have got a very strong link where what we would call the average person, and sorry to anyone that might think they're average out there, haven't. So I think that, yeah, they are probably of a higher intelligence spiritually and of an intelligence. It's just this world that they live in is harder for them.
And absolutely it's harder for them. I mean, you think about, especially since lockdown, for example, the dreaded lockdown. I mean, before lockdown, there was, let's say, a lot of children that didn't enjoy school. They didn't enjoy that environment. They didn't enjoy the hustle and bustle of it. They didn't enjoy being anyone raising their voice or being bullied in the playground. You know, of course, nobody enjoys being bullied in the playground. But these children, the indigos, the crystals and the rainbows, they're all highly sensitive. And obviously that would go into neurodiversity, wouldn't it? So since the lockdown, since then, there was all this like fear around them. Now that it's almost like they had that solitude. They had, you know, a lot of them had lessons online and actually preferred it because they didn't have to go out of their houses and they didn't have to go into that big wide world, that scary world. They didn't have to go and eat in a big hall full of people while, you know, there's noise. And I mean, I hate it. I hate being in one of those sort of restaurants that are really loud. It really does my head in. Crowds do my head in. Supermarkets do my head in. I hate it. In fact, I have to make myself almost. I have to rev myself up for the whole idea of it. You imagine all those children who are now school avoidant, and obviously a lot of people are calling them, you know, snowflakes, because there was a lot of horrible people online, and they do say, oh, you know, kids today, they're snowflakes if they brought back things like national service, and that would sort of sort them out, make them into men. Sort the men from the boys, you know, and all that sort of thing. But I could not imagine any of this sort of child or any child or young adult that's neurodiverse going into some sort of war zone or being taught how to use a gun or,
They probably
you
did,
know,
didn't they? They probably
but they
did before
but they
there was a
did.
label for it.
Yeah. But again, was that because of the times then and their attitude of wanting to be part of it, wanting to help, wanting to defend their country? Whereas we haven't, not in England, haven't had any sort of war. I mean, England go and fight other people's wars, don't they? But we don't have really any well, anybody that's necessarily targeting our country right at this moment, apart from, you know, terrorists, perhaps. Do you know what I mean? But that is maybe a different sort of war. But I mean, you couldn't imagine a lot of these children and young adults who are really very sensitive, very neurodiverse, who can't even cope in a school setting. But because, the government and everyone else says that you have to go, these children have to go to school 100% attendance, or literally they're named and shamed, and they have to do this and they have to do that. But these children can't cope with it, right? And there's nothing, though, in the middle, is there? There's nothing where, there's things like forest schools. And there's things like schools that are special schools and schools that are designed for children that have got some sort of additional need or neurodiverse, and they're on special programs and they're on special um, have special lessons, and it's tailored to them. But in a normal everyday school, they can't do that. I used to work in a normal everyday school. I did it for years and years and years. And those children are falling behind and not being nurtured not because they're snowflakes, not because they're wimps or what have you. It's just because that's who they are.
Or is it because, Sam being a slightly younger generation than us two anyway, we've got children of an age where ADHD and stuff like that would not have been as openly recognised. It would have been dismissed as a naughty child or an awkward child. And I know that from experience, because obviously now having a son of nearly 37 that actually has ADHD and has been diagnosed with that more recently, shows that his behaviours came from that condition, but the outside world was saying he was being this and being that. Do you not think, though, now, and anyone out there, this isn't a dig at anyone with, like I said, my own son, and I think I've got ADHD. The more I've worked with Lewis and the more I've studied it, I think I've got traits of something.
I've definitely got something.
Do you not think that there's been so much publicity and so much work done on diagnosing, and I'm going to keep saying it, like labelling, because we're labelling people all the time, not just in this, other subjects we could talk about how people are labelled, but they've been given this diagnosis, they've been given this title, given this condition, named this condition, but hang on a minute. So we've acknowledged it and we've moved forward in time to acknowledge that there's a lot of people out there, children and adults, trying to make sense of why things have been a struggle for them. But where's the support? They're quite quick to put these names out, give them titles, say it's this. And Sam, you can probably answer this because you've been doing a lot of work with schools and behind the scenes with this. Where is the true support? No good saying your child has ADHD, your child has autism or anything else. And then, but there's not enough Senko stuff. There's not enough assessment. We can't put them through that. Our school can't cope with that. Pointless giving children these conditions, as they're called, if they're not still moving forward in the times and realising there is probably a lot more people out there now with some kind of neurodiversity that needs assistance, and yet still the resources are pulled on it.
The problem is it's a double-edged sword, is that you can't necessarily get the right help without a diagnosis, but you can't get a diagnosis without certain evidence. And that's part of the problem. Even though Portsmouth actually state it is needs-led, unfortunately there are still massive gaps, and there are so many services out there that you can be referred to. As you guys know, I've worked with extra needs families for years now, working inside schools and out. And there is still such a massive gap, and it is due to, unfortunately, like funding and staff. My youngest, Odin, he needs certain routines at school that needs kind of like a one-to-one or a group setting. He can't get that every day because there's a staff shortage. So he'll only get it if there's enough staff in. It's things like that. And I've got 3 children, as you know. My oldest is autistic, ADD, psychosis, quite a lot of high anxiety. And for me, I believe he's one of these crystal children, definitely.
Yeah, and again, I believe the same with Lewis, because the more you have to live with somebody like that, obviously in the younger days, I knew there was something different about him, but now that's actually come back and it's been said that he's been struggling with this since a young age, and obviously he's been back living with me as an adult. I've certainly seen more, and that's where I've actually looked at my own traits and thought, I clearly have some kind of ADHD trait. They've told us that because normally it runs in the family, there's a gene. So if a child's got it, one of the parents, if not both, have got it. So obviously we did a little bit of a blame game, me and his dad. No, we didn't. We took it on. But then again, that's the interesting thing, because back in our day, our classrooms were big. Then they made them small again, and now they're
Mm.
big again. I mean, obviously, my youngest is 24 now. I haven't been back in the classroom and seen the size for some years. Sam, you've still got children in school. They constantly keep moving the goalposts. They can't cope with the kids they've got. But like I said, if you flip that round and looked at the majority of that classroom, probably now has some kind of need,
Mm.
special need. They need to either be looking at the way they're training the teachers or looking at the way they're running the schools.
You see, I get quite a lot of messages from teachers myself, and they ask me, like, I've got a child with X, Y, and Z. What do I do with them? Because these children are having to have short timetables, or they have to have some extra need that they can't provide. What can they do with these children? And it actually come to light recently that if these teachers need support, they have to pay for it, or the school has to pay for it. So any ideas when it comes to extra needs children, even the schools are having to pay for it. And I'm like, but shouldn't this be something that should be provided to
Well,
schools?
yeah. I mean, when I worked in the schools and as a special, it was actually the title was special needs assistant at the time, and I remember having one-to-one children and then ending up with about 4 more, 5 more. You know what I mean? Because these other children, they couldn't cope. So, I mean, it has actually worked out quite nicely because the one-to-one child obviously is going to embrace having other children around them. Does that make sense? So, in a way, it actually was quite nice. It wasn't all the time. There was still one-to-one. And there were still times when we were in the classroom, but I was helping one-to-one, for example. But, you know, there was times when perhaps, you know, those other children it's not a cop out by any means because those children needed that small group being out of the classroom. They needed that time where it was like, there was differentiation and that the work was easier for them. And yes, they try and obviously provide that. But if that teacher doesn't have like a one-to-one, well, like a teaching assistant in their room, which some do and some don't. It depends obviously on the school and the funding, etc. If you're in a deprived area, you are more likely to have teaching assistants within the classrooms because they get more funding than the ones that aren't, that haven't got that sort of, um, intake. But it is hard. It is hard. I mean, I've been in schools and for years and years and years. My mum was a teacher before that in actually one of the worst areas of Leicester. And you go through life, don't you? And you think you're sending your child to school and it's all great, you know what I mean? And it's lovely. I mean, sometimes you do need a break from your own children, especially if they're challenging, don't you? I mean, that's being honest.
Yeah.
Right. But then when they're there, you want them to be provided with the correct sort of learning. And unfortunately, a normal mainstream school can't always offer that. Not unless the child is in a category where they are entitled to
Well,
one-to-one and get
maybe that's where
extra funding.
Sam just said that when they need less time, they need shorter sort of classroom time.
But yeah, because they can't
Maybe
cope with it.
the education system in a whole then, because
Mm.
I went to school, obviously, many moons ago. I enjoyed school until I hit senior school. I didn't cope well with senior school. Like you said, bigger area, lots more people wanted to bully you for the wrong shoes. In my case, curly hair, you name it, I got it. Then I became sort of a bit of a rebel, so I struggled. But looking back, did I struggle because I couldn't accept that move from a nice little school to a great big school? Whatever reason, I struggled. But I was always one for my kids must go to school, they must go to college, and then after that they can do what they want as long as they've completed their education. I went on myself, I did university studies, I worked at the university. I was always big up the education. But now, as a much more mature person, and the work we do spiritually and the work I do generally, like again, you've worked in school, Sam, you've worked in school, Polly, I've worked as a mentor for teenage girls after school in their different deprived school areas, and I've gone and worked with them. Is it not the education system that we need to look at, and maybe the classroom sizes, and maybe the fact that these days are too long? I know people are laugh who are watching it who've got kids at school and going, no, they're too short, but maybe they need the day. They're so draconian, aren't they? Start at this time, finish at that time. Why can't we be more flexible?
They are in other countries. I
want to research it before we came on, which is very poor of me. But I know that countries like Norway, Switzerland have really high rates of actually very happy children. They've got much more flexibility in their education. And is our education system a little bit draconian in general, not just for anyone that has
Or run by draconians?
Well, And there you go. And is that why not enough things are put into the system to help?
Mhm.
Because when you think they spend a lot of time at school and then they spend, as we have, a lot of time at work, and then you're dead. Actually, when you look at it like that, that's actually quite a sad way of looking at your life. We spend more time with your work
I
colleagues.
laugh, but it is actually not funny,
Well, it's
is
not
it?
funny because it's a
Yeah.
fact. So if we hadn't been conditioned in school to think we must be at school, we must do this, and you must face somebody, because that's something I struggle with. Why have we always got to sit facing in a draconian way, and then we've got to go to work and we must do as we're told? That whole thing doesn't really sit within the makeup of a spiritual being, because a spiritual
Of course it
being
doesn't.
wants to feel and understand and live life, and not in a rebellious or angry or aggressive or any kind of way, other than just want to acknowledge what's around him in the world.
Mm.
So we are conditioned, all of us, to do things that maybe we struggle with, not because we're neurodiverse, but because it's not what we were put here to do. And if you
But look at
question it,
where,
you're not
yeah,
as disruptive.
and look where we all are. I mean, predominantly, I know we've all had our day jobs, but we haven't now. We're self-employed, and all of us work in a spiritual way or holistic way. And it's amazing, isn't it, how as well, us beings, which would probably be more in the indigo section, right, somewhere or another, because we are. And our children, we've all got children who have got, without a doubt, my kids have got different things, I can tell you now, right? But it's amazing, isn't it? How then I always think you grow up, you have to go through a system. And when we were younger, you just went, and my mum would have like whipped me all the way to school. You know what I mean? And it was like, you're going to go to school because that's what you did. You didn't argue it. You just did it until I didn't. And then used to go and hide for the day, go to registration and then go out and then come back again for registration, which I did do. In those days, nobody questioned it as long as you were there for registration. But I didn't like it. I did not enjoy school. I didn't even enjoy infant school. I hated it. And I never wanted to be there at school at any point. I liked college because I'd chosen what I wanted to do by then.
Yeah, I think I liked my infant and junior school were together. They were next to each other. So although it got slightly bigger, it was still quite nice. It was literally around the corner from my house. And like I said, I'm a little bit older than you and I'm a lot older than Sam. And I probably had quite a small knit school at the time. The school itself is still running, and I think it has much bigger classrooms, obviously. But I went there in a time when it would have been a much smaller classrooms. When my brothers went, my older brother was just leaving actually as I was going into each school. But when my younger brother went, we even had that family network. So I liked it, and I probably liked it because I liked doing the art and I liked doing, now, I love researching, I love learning, and I still learn now. But like you said, in my way, how I want to do it. I have no bad memories of my younger days at school, only my senior days. But as we were talking about, what we might be indigo, I'm clearly not an indigo because of the decade I was born in. This is what
There's something in your own.
I'll be whatever I want, actually, because I'm in my own little world after anyway. But before the indigo children concept, because obviously this is what it's a concept of what we believe, that emerged in the 70s and 80s. So obviously I was born in the 60s, as were you, Polly.
I was born in 1970. I'll have you know.
I'm definitely not an indigo because I was born in the 60s. She just got onto the 70s.
I'm the first. I was the first.
There wasn't a directly named spiritual generation. So like Sam said, it's a generational thing. Like I'm generations X, aren't I? I think for my decade, which was the best one, let's be fair. But the idea built upon earlier New Age spiritual concept. And we hear that a lot. And I remember growing up, still quite young, watching a program on telly that my dad always had on, The Age of Aquarius. And they had the man, the Aquarius man, and that used to be on there. And they used to call that the New Age then. So obviously that concept was around, even if it was used in a science program.
It was before our day, wasn't it, Sam?
Yeah, as I said, I am the eldest here. So I've been around a bit longer. But it says that the age spiritual concepts like auras, so they would have been called auras, life colours. Quite like that. I'm one of life's colours.
Nice.
And the search for special souls. Oh, well, I'm definitely a special soul, aren't I? I'll take all three, actually. So in my decade, I would sit around there. Again, back then, people would have thought I was a raving lunatic, let's be fair. And
All those colours.
Yeah, the later generations came with the Crystal children, the Rainbow children, following a very strong indigo wave. I don't know if that means it was a big baby boom for the indigo
I
children.
was the first indigo, I've decided. So what's your year of birth, Sam?
86, so I'm indigo.
She's definitely an
You're an
indigo.
indigo.
Yeah.
Look at you. I'm an old indigo and you're a young indigo. So do you think, Sam, that because we talked about your son DJ and we love DJ anyway, don't we? He's great.
Everybody loved my
He's
DJ.
right. But Odin, though, I can see a lot in Odin. I can see a lot of let me just read a couple. So the Crystal children, I was going to read a few bits. So they're new age, spiritually gifted children, high empathy, very creative. He's creative.
Mm.
What year was he born?
DJ was 2006.
So he's definitely into 2006. The Crystal children are from around, it says 1990s, early 1990s
the
to
2000s.
2010.
Yeah.
2010. They promote love and peace. They have an amazing connection to animals and nature. Isn't that
Yeah.
Odin, though?
No,
And these are very...
Odin is 2017. DJ
Yeah, but
is
that goes into the rainbow, which are very,
Yeah.
very similar, the third wave. This one's interesting. Did he ever have delayed speech?
Well, Odin,
Either of them.
yes.
Yeah. So delayed speech at the beginning is actually a sign. Can be over affectionate. Well, I know that when I've been round, Odin like jumps from a great height, lands on my head and gives me a hug. So I think he goes under that one. They've got a high healing energy, highly sensitive,
Natural healers.
can be telepathic. They get overwhelmed with sensory situations. So, I mean, you could probably go back as far as Lewis and Joel with that, couldn't you?
You
In a
could,
way,
other than the fact Lewis was talking and walking at 9 months.
yeah. Joel was talking at a ridiculous age.
On
DJ
his
was
first
good.
birthday, he was having full senses and walking around picking up empty beer cans and the cigarette butts.
Yeah, and
I
but
should
there
have
is a
known
bit in
then,
there.
shouldn't I? I should have known.
There is a bit in there of being a very old soul, so he might have come into the very old soul category.
Well, I
I mean,
think
you're not going to
as
pick
in the
every box.
last 4 years with his soul, I think we've definitely know that he has definitely got an old soul that has struggled massively in this world.
It said that indigo children have a mission or a desire to change the world, as where
And that,
crystal
yeah.
children have a mission to just help people.
to promote love and peace.
Yeah.
And if you think about that with the neurodiversity, and like Jane said earlier, with regard to being somewhere on the autistic spectrum, and again, not all, but a lot of people have elements of neurodiversity, don't they? And ADHD. You know, these sort of children can be very overstimulated. Those sort of adults can be very highly overstimulated. I know I can be. It's like I just literally feel like my head's going to fly off the neck.
I mean, with neurodiverse children, it can be very unsettling at first for parents until they accept their child the way that they are. And it's a long, long process to acceptance. So for a long time, it took me 9 years for an actual diagnosis and the right support for DJ. And I was always told I was just a bad mother until that one psychiatrist that we finally got to see said, no, actually, he's this, that, and the other, which was a great relief for him. And for a long time, I thought, is he going to be able to function in society the way that I thought? But actually, now he's got a full-time job. He's a supervisor. He's done so well. And I had at points thought, can he manage that because of his conditions? But he's put every expectation I had out the water and gone so much higher. But then on the flip side, he's like, okay, we've done all of this fantastic work. He still needs a PA. So he still needs that consistent support. But with that consistent support, he's allowed to thrive in the way that he has. But like the other day, he was having a little bit of meltdown, and I'm like, okay, do you want a hug? He's like, no one touch me. You know, he gets that over heightened sensory mode, and he's like, he can't be touched. But yet, like most of the time, he can actually function. He can go to work. He can, normal life relatively, to what people think neurodiverse is. I've got family that's neurodiverse, and with them, some of them like, "Oh, they can't do this, that, and the other." And actually, give them a chance, and they probably can.
Yeah, of course they can. Yeah. I
And it's
think,
just having, like you said, and like Jane said as well, like both of you have said in different ways, if you get the right support, you have to fight for that support.
Yeah, that's
But if
the
you get
problem.
the right support, that's when your child will thrive. When somebody believes in them, when you've got somebody that might even have a similar
like Sam
things
said,
going on
when you let
themselves.
them be their selves
Yeah.
and work it out that way, stop trying to fit, as I now have learnt with my son, you can't fit a square peg in a round hole. I am probably, I mean, Sam, how did you feel when you felt a bad parent? Because I know how I felt when I thought it was my fault. It's a horrible feeling, isn't it?
It
It's like you failed.
is like you felt, and it's a feeling, to be honest with you, you cannot describe unless you've been through it. You
Mm,
can't describe it at all. I know some people are like, "Oh, I shouldn't have done that. I feel like a bit of failure," but actually, no, this is like, it's almost completely different. But then I don't know if it's because of my Virgo head or whatever, but my brain just switched on and go, "No, keep pushing." Keep pushing until somebody listens to you. My stubborn side is like so strong as a mother that just kept saying to me, "Just keep going." And for 9 years or more, it took me, I eventually got that result. And he was happy with that because it actually allowed him to understand himself more.
mm,
But coming from, from as him as a child, coming from me as a spiritualist, he grew up with meditation. He grew up with cards. He grew up with seeing me do lots of different things. But because of his neurodiversity, it kind of like he had to kind of cut off from what I do at some point in order to allow his mind and his brain to kind of accept also what I do, and then realised that actually he might be a little bit spiritual himself.
mm,
He's always been spiritual. From when he was very young, he used to see spirit, but he could never his autistic side could never allow him to kind of accept that. So it's like there was a constant battle going on inside of him. So I remember the psychiatrist saying to me, "Do you think some of it could be spiritual?"
mm,
Which is completely out of the norm for a professional.
A psychiatrist, yeah, but thankfully some of my son's mental health team have been pretty understanding to my work and have not. I mean, I haven't pushed my work in the beginning. I wanted to see how far it would go before I had to intervene. And obviously me and Polly did in the end when we used spirit release. But that doesn't mean I'm not saying some of their practices didn't help, but I don't think it
mm,
was going to cure. And actually, that's another thing. You cannot cure neurodiversity. You cannot cure mental health. That unfortunately does come hand in hand with it if the right background and needs isn't assessed. But you can just learn to understand it and accept that people are individuals for their own reason because that makes them unique.
mm,
Spiritually, yeah. I mean, I've always said Lewis is highly spiritual. I mean, all right, when he got baptized in the church, I didn't quite mean that spiritual, but I'll let him get away with that for now. But as long as it's making him happy, that's all I care about. But he
mm,
has got a very evolved soul. It's clear to me now as a spirit working in spirit myself. But it's also where I also see how much someone would struggle. And we've picked this up a lot in our spirit release work, where people are struggling with their spiritual sides because of their neurodiverse side, because they are actually seeing and hearing and maybe visualizing in quite graphic ways what we do for a living that we seem to take as an everyday occurrence. And I didn't when I was younger, and we've talked about this before, Polly. We didn't really understand some of the stuff we could see and hear as youngsters, but we just chin up and got on with it because of our
mm,
generation. Is this why crystals and indigos and rainbow children are struggling with their mental health and unfortunately for some cases, as in my son, addiction, because they can't get that square peg in a round hole? They don't understand the things that are going on in their head, especially if it's spiritual stuff. And where do they go from there? So they
mm.
really are carrying a massive load, aren't they?
It's
Oh, yeah.
knowledge, isn't it? It's where the knowledge should start with not just the professionals, but the parents as well. And as I said earlier about acceptance, we need to accept our children the way that they are. But also what I said earlier is there are massive gaps in the system and within that knowledge base and how to get the knowledge out. And I've seen those gaps, and I've just done a parenting information program, as you guys know, through the organisation that I volunteer for. And within that, I've tried to incorporate also holistic approaches. So the meditation, the deep breathing, all different like kinds of deep breathing and meditation, and getting that into parents and professionals, trying to get it, for very young children, because I'm not saying that the children now can't be helped, but the earlier that we can get this knowledge out to parents and professionals, the better it will be for the next generations coming up.
I mean, they are in certain schools doing meditation and things like that. Some secondaries as well, especially, I have heard of it where they have done sort of meditations before exams and things like that, which I think is amazing. I mean, if you've got to do exams, which is pants in itself, I mean, some people love them, a lot of people hate them, I hate them.
But schools should be sharing that with parents. And parents
Yeah.
don't even know generally what their children are doing in school.
Can
No,
you see then why more parents are turning to homeschooling?
well, I don't blame them, to be quite honest.
I don't
The only
blame
thing is, my only gripe with it is that there is a couple of people that are on Facebook that supposedly homeschool their children, and I'm not naming any names because it's up to them at the end of the day. I don't see many lessons going on, put it that way.
But what do you call lessons? What if they were doing lessons in life?
Yes, but there's lessons in life which I totally agree with. I'd rather that there was a whole thing at secondary school, for example, where they're actually teaching kids how to do their taxes, how to pay bills, how to budget, right? I'd actually love to see something like that because that's useful,
Well, that's
right?
actually interesting because my friend's son, her youngest son, they were more like my nephews growing up. Our families were very close. He left school and he went on to do some different qualifications, I think, but he got into finance and he realised how little education has done to people leaving school on how to manage their finances.
Mm.
So he went around schools and started doing talks on finances at that senior year. And then he set up little programs for it. And that worked for quite a while. At the moment, I mean, he loves an idea, bless him, Alfie. At the moment, he's running, I think it's called Up or Speak. It's over Facebook a lot for Portsmouth. And he's going into building construction sites and doing podcasts like we're doing and talking about mental health and how that people on building sites are really struggling with their mental health and they're getting up and going to work on doing these very manual jobs. So he's always had this idea in his head of how to find, like Sam says about gaps in the school in general, finding gaps on where we're not teaching enough about finances, about mental health. They can bleat on about it all they like. They can put it on
Yeah.
they like. They're not talking about it. Neurodiversity, again, all over the place, always talked about, things going up, still not doing enough about it. Dementia, you could literally go on forever. And obviously, all subjects that obviously have started to affect me, but you could literally find so much in this current world where we're meant to be so advanced now, where they are missing opportunities to talk to people about their well-being, about their finances, and about how, I mean, there was a big campaign on bullying, wasn't there? Well, that's great. But what about all these neurodiverse children or special needs, as it was called back then? I've never liked that. I've always thought that sounded horrible.
Mm.
But what about all the bullying they endured?
But the bullies
Yeah.
themselves generally have an issue going
Look.
on. And that's one of the things I have over the years tried to pull into schools, that actually, yes, support the victim, but what are you doing to support the bully? Because there is obviously something going on there, whether it's something at home or, yeah, it could be that that child is just that way inclined. But either way, that child needs some support or to have more understanding, and they're not
You're
doing that.
actually very right, Sam. I mean, obviously, we hate the fact that bullying happens, and it does. It happens at schools, and it happens in the workplace, and it happens in families, and it happens in all sorts of scenarios at
And
the
it
end of the
happens
day.
on Facebook.
And it happens on Facebook every single day. It happens in every single community group. Somebody asks what the bus times was. Oh, hey, I haven't got Google. You think, "Oh, just stop, right?" But you know, I'm not talking about the adults who are being judgmental, racist, and everything else, because that is
Whole
totally
different show,
unacceptable.
Polly. That's a whole
Totally,
new show.
totally unacceptable. However, like Sam just said, there are those children. What is happening in their home? Why are they bullying? Why are they not sick? Are they being bullied at home? Are they being abused at home?
Just about to
There's
say,
very,
it's
very
not
highly
just
likely
about
there's something going on.
yes, 100%. Because when I did
Mm,
my volunteer work for the NSPCC, which obviously is why I went on to become a mentor for teenage girls. I mean, teenage girls was charity because they feel that teenage girls don't get enough. If they're not getting enough insight at home, they will go. It's that sort of thing that's written that they will go and get pregnant at an early age and they won't have an education and stuff like that. To
mm,
be honest, as much as I enjoyed my work, I still feel there was a gap there missing. But what about boys? How about educating the teenage boys to not go and get the girl pregnant in the first place? And actually, why is it always about the girl ruins her life? Because there are boys out there as well that have no focus, no drive, nowhere, no one to look up to, no male model maybe to know what they want in their life. Stop. Why are we always finding, oh, we'll help the girls? No, let's help all children, whatever's wrong.
yeah.
But with the NSPCC, a lot of the bullying that you would come across would be because they had a violent parent or they'd had an abusive parent in another way, which is obviously quite sad. And that's quite a tough gig to work with anyway, the NSPCC. But I know from experience that the bullies that I experienced, and I was a bully myself, and I will say that because I never thought I was. But I was a very strong, as Sam said, with Virgos, we're quite strong-minded, independent people. But if I wanted my own way at school, I got in my group of friends, I would get it or try and get it. Is that not a form of bullying? To make sure my friend group did as I said, or was that a form of leadership? I don't know. As I went on, I
I
became.
think it's probably a fine
It's
line. I
probably
think
a
it
fine
depends.
line, but
Yeah.
you look back at some of the things that you might have thought, "Oh, I wasn't very nice there. I shouldn't have acted nice. I should have acted better there." But actually think, "Oh, well, that's not that bad." But bullying's bullying if it's upsetting the person that's getting it. Any kind of upset, and like you said, in the workplace now, and even in on social media now, if someone's aiming that, especially at a stranger, that's bullying because you don't know what your words, whether you can see that picture or not, and then Mr. Anonymous, because I noticed that the anonymous people now on Facebook have got names put next to them that are automatically generated. I mean, even Facebook's making a thing out of the anonymous people trolling, but that you don't know what that's doing to that person behind the scenes. So
Absolutely.
if you are
It's
not
awful.
being kind, whatever the thing, you are bullying. It's as simple as that. It's bullying.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I
So it's
believe
not
that
no.
they should, yes, have consequences to their actions. However, they also needed that support as well, or that knowledge in order to not bully, to understand,
Exactly.
that
And
everybody.
I remember when I was mentoring, we did a campaign on bullying. I remember when I was doing my education studies at uni, we did a thing on bullying as we did a thing on VSA, which is where they inhale this Norse gas. And I am going back some years. I think Drew was only 5 himself. And Norse gas is still a big thing out there. We did a whole thing on how to prevent children using it because it's so dangerous, and even squirting it out the fridge out of the canister, the cream. But we keep doing these campaigns. We keep going, oh, this month, let's be about this. Why are we constantly doing that and not just actually all round knowing that there's a lot of things that need changing? There's a lot of things that the money, I think, would be better spent on.
Yeah,
That
absolutely. And
whole other ball game.
education and support being mental health
Yes.
being a massive factor,
And then going
obviously.
back to you said about teacher assistants, I've got friends that are teacher assistants. My own auntie's a teacher assistant, and I've got friends that are teachers. Is it because the school? We know it's funding. My mentoring was done on funding. I went into schools by the funding that they had left to pay the mentors, not me direct, but the charity to come in and do it. Everything's always about funding. We know that now. We are grown-ups. We know how this world works. So not that less people want to do that job.
Mm.
It's also
Well,
about
like,
organisation, I think. It's about the schools themselves, the organisation of their staff and the allocation of their money. Also the organisation of the government and how they organise their people and their money as well.
well, And it's the fact, like you said, I mean, not as many people would want to be teachers because of all the bureaucracy, because of all the paperwork, and because of all the standards that every single teacher and child is supposed to be hitting, and that some of these children can't hit. They can't do it.
When they have a teacher training day and the parents, and I was one of those parents, go, oh, well, yeah, you've just had a week off. But I now know from my teacher friends that they didn't have a week off because they were either
And they
still
were doing
marking,
everything,
they were
marking.
prepping classrooms, yeah. And then on parents' evening, they don't go in for that. They go in for parents' evening. They've just done a day's teaching. They've got to go back in for parents'
Well,
evening.
they just don't even go home.
Well,
I know that.
do now respect that that teachers are not. I mean, I've got friends teachers that left as well. They became invigilators and then they went on to leave. And one of them actually works in the police force now, doing their training for the police. But that's how bad it's got, because the more you got the ladder in education as a teacher and go towards even a headmaster, you come with more responsibility, less time at home, and less stress. A lot of stress for teaching children that are actually on a tight budget, on a tight time frame, and like you said, meeting targets. It wasn't until I trained in education that I realised about those targets. Of course I knew my children sat exams, of course I knew they did SAT, not to the degree they do now, but when I realised that those marks, they're not for that child's benefit, they're for the school's benefit, they're for the offset.
Well, they're not even for the schools. They are for the school's benefit, but their school, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, the children, when I used to work and they used to have to be, when SATs was coming up, it's months before they are targeting certain areas, targeting certain questions, targeting this, targeting that, making sure that these children are actually getting something to eat before they start this, because some children are not eating. They're sent out the door without any food, not adequate food, they haven't had adequate sleep, and they're trying to get these children, some of them shouldn't be doing, because they aren't either mature enough, or the whole thing is so stressful that it causes them so much anxiety. And what are we doing just for the fact that they've got to have ticks and boxes?
Exactly.
The schools don't even want to do it. The schools don't even want to do it. It's the government that's making them do
And
it.
it's no different in higher education, because in the university
Yeah.
it was all about where you sat on the league table. And for all the years I put in, not only working for the university, but also training, I only did a mini course on education. It wasn't the subject I wanted anyway. I wanted psychology, but I had to do it. It wasn't till then that I really looked at it all and thought, oh my God, what are we doing to our children? What are we doing to our children? So not just the neurodiverse ones, all children. And is that why pressures as an adult are becoming stronger and stronger, and people are just, because it is eat, sleep, repeat, isn't it? Work, the old thing, eat, sleep, repeat, but it is actually that cycle of you just go to work, you come home, you've got no time for nothing. Like you said, we're lucky because we're self-employed, but even that's become to the point where you're constantly juggling stuff because of all the cutbacks and the economy and everything how it is. So imagine being back in a 9 to 5 job, or in their cases, not 9 to 5, because they're going home with a glass of red vino and trying to mark stuff after a long day of kids being vile to them. Because again,
and often to their own kids that are at home. Hey, we're going to have to bring this to a wrap, I'm afraid, but it's been a really interesting conversation.
Could I just ask, so kind of wrapping it up, that what advice would you give to a parent that they feel that they might have a crystal or a rainbow child and would like to encourage it?
I would say, I mean, first of all, like you said, accept them for who they are, because they are highly intelligent and sensitive children. I want to say, in any way that they do flourish, help them to flourish. So if it is animals, or if it is music or in a musical instrument, or if it is some sort of exercise, or whatever it is that they like doing, it doesn't have to be academic. What matters is to push them into something, or encourage them into something that they do like, because a lot of kids will sit on their screens and
that is my biggest bugbear. I know it's technology and I know it's there. I hated it with my older grandchildren when they sit there, but the screen time needs to be monitored. I know we're on a screen now, and I know we're streaming ourselves, but we know when to come off it. But the screen time, I can't see as helping anyone that's got, I mean, one of my biggest things with Lewis when he was unwell, sitting with his phone, that tiny little phone right up to his head doing games, and yet he's got all that stuff going on in his head and all those voices, and he's got that phone, and I kept thinking, just put the phone down, go for a walk. But how do you tell someone to do that when they're
an adult? It's very hard. But anything you can do to encourage them to do something, first of all, that they love doing, enjoy doing, or is something that's going to get them outside in nature or get them exercising or thinking in a different way.
But I also think, like, into your question, Sam, it's not so much about what advice you would give to a parent to how, if they think they've got a child like that. I actually think the advice is it's not what they can do for the child, it's what they can do for themselves. I think it's about them learning and understanding. And if they're not as spiritually open, because like I said, back in my day when I was on the New Age board, apparently we were the original Indigos, but New Age, it wasn't about spiritual stuff. It was just about, it was a terminology used if you were in a spiritual environment like a hippie. The change happened with the names and calling it more the souls as decades went on and knowledge became more available on a spiritual level. So I think parents, even if they're not very spiritual, still look at alternative medicines or alternative things for their self. That they have some time out, so that they have some understanding and that they know. I always had a thing where I walked away and counted to 10, mainly because back in the day I probably would have hit him, which I know I shouldn't say on live, but you know, like I said, I'm an older mum, so I would walk away and count to 10. But I think now it's not so much walking away and counting to 10, it's actually still doing some deep breathing, but actually finding coping mechanisms. So I think it's more not how the parent copes with them, how the parent learns to cope with themselves and how they're feeling.
And to accept the child as the child is, and to, I would say, anything that you can do to help them spiritually, not to force them into a religion, not to force them just because you believe in this. It's to let them be who they are and not to be out of control and not to not have boundaries, because I do still think that children need them.
I totally agree with the boundaries. I think boundaries are still important, but I think
Boundaries are important.
there's
They
some
need to know where they
flexibility now
are.
on the boundaries. You know, like when a child wants to put their welly boots on, and I'm going from experience here of one of my grandchildren, they want their welly boots on with they're going out somewhere nice, but they only want to put their wellies on or their Sonic slippers.
I'd let them.
I laugh because I'm the grandparent now, so I think it's funny. But I do remember those times because both my boys clearly showed signs of minimal, probably autism, but it was there. The constantly tying the shoes and doing it just right and pulling the trouser legs down. But if Drew always wanted to wear his wellies, it didn't matter what the weather was, he wanted to put his wellies on. And in the end, I gave up. Being an older mum when I had him, I just thought, let him wear his bloody wellies, Jane. But with Lewis and Amy, it would have been take them off and put your shoes on, because I would have been a sterner, even though younger mum, that's not right. And now when my grandson does it, I laugh and just think, do you know what? It's the expectations of the adults and maybe the little bit of the too much of a perfect life and making it all look perfect. Just let it go. And if they go out in trousers and a pair of wellies, so what? If it's keeping them happy.
And I would
if
say someone that, if I'd say to someone that's actually watching this now, thinking that really makes sense, not just for your children, but actually for yourself, I would say look into it more.
Yeah, and look into other ways.
Works, except like I've got a weird side, like we all do in this room right now. We've accepted that. Actually look more into it, and actually the more you look into it, the more that you'll accept yourself for who you are.
Yeah.
So
100%.
on that note, we are going to have to go. But please, guys, do comment on this. Let us know how, if you've experienced this or you have children you feel are in this category, or yourself maybe. It'd be great to hear your comments. And
can I just say, obviously it hasn't gone out directly, it'll go out after this, after we finish. So please still comment, because we will look on it, and all three of us will go on it and look on it when I share it. And we will comment, and we will comment back to you. So that don't think because it's not live, we can't actually still answer your comments, because we can. We want to interact, so we will.
Until next week, take care, everybody.
Bye for now.
See you later. Bye.
Thank you, Sam.